It's January the 21st, 1879. The British Army have set up camp on the hill at Isandlwana and sent out men to observe the approaching Zulu enemy. But this is where the British make a critical mistake. This main column consisted of approximately 4,700 men, including infantry. We also had the colonial cavalry, and these were primarily white Natal locals, and also what the British at the time called the Natal Native Contingent.
One has to ask themselves, how did they end up on this side of the battle? And so, from what I understand, they were exiled from the Zulu kingdom. I suspect maybe they were all as tall as me and they got told to, they didn't make the 2-meter mark. But so they fell part of the British forces. They weren't given any uniforms, so the only way to differentiate themselves was with a red band, either on the arm or on the head. And then from a weaponry perspective, only 1 in 10 chaps had a gun. So they opted to rather use more traditional Zulu weaponry.
Absolutely. The British also had a total of 4 artillery pieces, 2 7-pounder mountain guns and 2 9-pounder field guns. And this was where the British made their first big mistake. They did not laager or circle the wagons or create any actual defensive fortifications.
So the laager was a Boer tactic where they circled wagons to protect themselves in a ring of defense, which I think would have come handy given what's coming up.
Well, it was used very effectively by the Boers, and the 200 wagons back at Rorke's Drift back over there, they were already in a train formation ready to collect supplies, so they thought it was probably too much hassle to create that laager. And digging trenches would also, to be fair, have been incredibly difficult due to the shale in the ground. But the crucial factor in all of this, and I repeat it, is that Chelmsford and his fellow officers had completely underestimated the situation they were in. So they relied on vedettes, and they were placed on the plateau and at the conical cop over there to warn against any approaching danger. Now, I'd never heard of the word vedette, had you?
So I do know that it's a French military term for an individual on an equestrian, a mounted individual, as I say, who's sent up to a vantage point to survey the land and basically keep a lookout for any threats. And if he says anything, he lets everybody know at the base. But now it looks like everything's set up quite nicely. So, John, what happens next?
Chelmsford decided to send a force of Natal contingent and mounted colonial cavalry to determine Zulu strength to the southeast behind the Hlazakazi mountain.
What did they see when they came across the mountain?
A large contingent of Zulu warriors, several thousand strong, preparing for battle. They dash back to camp to deliver their report. Chelmsford splits his forces and takes nearly 3,000 soldiers and 2 artillery pieces to track down and fight what he believed was the main Zulu force. He leaves 1,300 men and 2 field guns to guard the camp. But what he didn't realize is that Fetzwayo was waiting for the British forces to move out of camp so they could strike. Early on the 22nd of January, Chelmsford leaves Yorkshire-born Lieutenant Colonel Henry Pullane in charge and goes hunting for the Zulu army. Chelmsford sent word to Lieutenant Colonel Anthony William Durnford, who was in command of the number 2 column, that he should move his men from Rorke's Drift to the camp at Isandlwana to support Pullane. After Chelmsford and his forces leave, the mounted vedettes rode out to their posts to keep lookout. And then breakfast began.
Breakfast. It seems like an odd time to have breakfast in the middle of a war.
Well, the officers would have had an officer's mess, believe it or not, complete with fine china and a fully cooked meal. So, at breakfast, firing could be heard from the east, and at 8 o'clock, a vedette rode in to report a large force of Zulus approaching from the northeast. The troops were called to arms by Pullane, then the pickup companies were brought in. Next time on Battlefield South Africa, a battle cry echoes through the valley of Isandlwana as the main Zulu force moves into their bull formation. Don't miss Battlefield South Africa.